episode of PhinManiacs Live. I am your host, Louis Sung, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Chad Ronenbaum. And joining us tonight for at least the first half hour is my good friend, Antoine Staley of Athlon Sports and the Palm Beach Post. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks, Louis. Glad to be
What's going
on.
on?
All right, so got a lot of stuff to talk about. It's been a while since we actually got to do a show. Got a little busy, had a lot of stuff to take on. So we're gonna see what we can tackle tonight because apparently the Dolphins can't. See what I said? See what I did there? All right.
Getting better, Louis. Your work's getting better.
All right. So Dallas Cowboys preseason game was last week, and just tomorrow they're going to be heading up to Orlando to play up against the Falcons. So we're going to go ahead and do the Cowboys game first, and I'm just going to give my quick rundown of what it was that I saw, and then you guys can give your own 2 cents, what really stood out to you the most. First and foremost, the Dolphins offense seemed to do a lot better than it did against the Giants, at least the first team. Ryan Tannehill had himself a good night. I believe it was 12 for 18. Oh, no, or was it 12 for 20? I think it was 12 for 20. 165 yards or so, 2 touchdowns. And both of those touchdowns went to Kenny Stills in the red zone. Both were very tough passes to make. Both were very tough catches to make. So kudos to Tannehill and Stills on that. Excellent pass protection. That's probably what caught my eye the most. The fact that all of a sudden Ryan Tannehill had enough time to throw the football. Oh, what a stunning revelation this is. Somebody who can actually keep him clean. Laramie Tunsilin at left guard. Suddenly everything starts working a little bit better. Just a little bit better. It doesn't seem as like a coincidence to me. So, and then of course there is the running game not working. That is a problem. On the defensive side of the ball, let's see. I have good things to say about Mike Hull, and I have good things to say about Shamil Gary. Everything else was a mess. Everything. Now, granted, it was against that Cowboys offensive line, often regarded as the best in the NFL, and I understand that. I'll give them just the slightest bit of the benefit of the doubt for that, but I am not liking what I'm seeing, and I'm seriously thinking that the run defense is going to be just as bad as it was last year, if not worse, and that concerns me, and it tells me that there's something seriously wrong with the personnel on the roster because new scheme, new coach, new everything else, and yet we still have the same patterns, the same problems that have been plaguing the Dolphins for the past year and a half. So something is very wrong with the people on the team and not so much the scheme itself, and that's what I'm really starting to worry about. And Chad, you're my co-host, so I'm going to let you go first this time. First. Can you tell I've had a long day? All right, so
Well,
Chad,
I did watch the game closely, Louis, and it was definitely encouraging to see Kenny Stills get involved with Ryan Tannehill. I think that it's pretty clear now he's locked down to be a starting wide receiver with Devontae Parker, Jarvis Landry. I don't think Carew is far enough along yet. I still think he's learning a lot. So I think your primary 3 starting receivers are set, which what people expected, but I was really looking for Stills to show some chemistry with Tannehill because last year he didn't really have that. So I was pretty excited about that. I'm not overly concerned about the running game just now. I think that Arian Foster, they're being extremely conservative with him right now. And I think when the Dolphins actually implement a game plan, what you're going to see the big changes is they're going to throw the ball a lot to the running backs out of the backfield. And so the ways in which the Dolphins move the football may not be a traditional slam the football up between the guard and tackle and run people over. They just don't have a line that's built for that right now. Like Juwan James is not a power run blocker, and obviously Dallas Thomas, if he's playing guard, obviously I don't think that'll be the case. But the guards that Philbin had brought in were meant to be able to be very mobile to run screens and pull and stuff like that. And so we don't really have personnel even now that you can just line up and slam the football at somebody. So I know it didn't look very pretty against Dallas, but fortunately the pass blocking did look a lot better. And so I think it's a real close match right now between Bushrod and Turner on the right guard. I think Tunsil obviously has already beat Dallas Thomas, but they're not just going to hand it to him. He still has a lot to learn. But I think overall you can feel pretty good about our offense in general, Louis. I think it's going to be significantly better than next year. And I think everybody's excited to see what Adam Gase does when they actually game plan for a team and use everybody at their disposal. On the other side of the football, I still think some of the players like Sue, Mario Williams, I think both those guys are taking it pretty easy from what I was watching on film. I don't think they're going all out. And I think the reason is they're just making sure they're going to be ready to go for the start of the season. You'll probably see them amp it up a little bit against the Falcons, but I'm not too worried about um, those guys. I am a little worried about our secondary still. I think there's a lot of inexperience there. And right now, this defense, we are going to have to be able to rush the quarterback. And I'm not quite there yet. I'm a little worried. I know there's been a lot of talk about the wide nine scheme, but just in general, that scheme is predicated when you play a lot of press man, you put in big corners. You've got to be able to have people that can get to the quarterback, because if you don't get that pressure, your defense is really exposed. And you saw a lot of that. A lot of our blitzes got stoned. We weren't getting consistent heat on, and that's why you were seeing Dallas just move the ball at will. Run defense, overall, what I'm really wondering about is Kiko Alonso. He didn't look good at all. He looked like he didn't take proper angles. He looked a little slow. And I don't know if that's him being careful to not get injured, or if that's him not quite understanding the scheme. But um, I know it's not apples to apples, because Alonso is going against a lot of the Dallas starters. But Mike Hall, to me, is outperforming him right now in the preseason. And I don't know how close that matchup is really on the depth chart, but at some point, if Alonso doesn't step up and start looking like a dominant football player, you got to start wondering about that right now. So I'm really concerned about that aspect of our run defense is mainly Alonso. I think Mike Hall and Neville Hewitt both are very close to Jelani Jenkins and Kiko Alonso right now in terms of drop off. So that matchup will be interesting to watch against the Falcons. I imagine they're finally going to leave those guys in there a long time. Adam Gase has clearly taken the approach this offseason to be very careful with people to try to keep them healthy. Obviously, Mike Pouncey was the first injury we've really had this preseason that is significant. And so Gase has done a really good job of keeping his team healthy. Now, the question is that going to make them less prepared when the action gets more live? And so I think with his philosophy, he's going to have to turn it loose against Atlanta. So that's going to be the really bar, I think, Lewis, in terms of was Dallas real or not real?
How about you, Antoine? Thoughts from the takeaway from the Cowboys game?
I mean, yeah, it's pretty much the same things y'all have said. Obviously, Tannehill looked good, especially you know converting plays to Kenny Stills. It should have been they could have scored even more had it not been for a couple of drops. Obviously, Jordan Cameron is the one that everybody's been talking about, has been sticking out, and hadn't been a lot of production from the tight end position. Throughout it wasn't it throughout camp and even throughout the preseason games, and even last year, quite frankly, to be honest with you. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen with that situation, because I don't know, like, even between him and Deion Sims, like I don't expect much production there. But you look at the running game, obviously Aaron Foster did get a lot of carries. I expect that to change a little bit this week. We'll see a little bit more running game. I don't know how much they're going to truly run the football, but I definitely think we'll get more, obviously a lot more there than we did last week. Offensive line, obviously Tunsil played really well and did a good job protecting Tannehill, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Bushrod and Billy Turner. That's very close at the moment. Obviously, Turner has the experience there at playing guard or really on the offensive line, but Bushrod's he's come a long way. You look at him where the OTAs and definitely the start of training camp and where he is now, he's definitely learned the position and come a really, really long way. So I'm curious to see how much growth he can continue to have on that offensive line. As far as the defense is concerned, it's not a lot to go on there. It's definitely a lot of missed tackles. That's what concerns me. It's not even scheme wise and things like that. It's just the missed tackles are very alarming to me, and it's a problem the Dolphins have had for the past few years. And it doesn't seem, and like you and Lewis said it best, it's a talent problem. It's not scheme. It's not anything else. It's really a talent problem at this point, and the guys that they have are just not making plays. Two, I'm not worried about on the defensive line. Mario Williams, I am a little bit, considering the fact that I know he may be taking it easy, but he kind of took it easy last year as well. So I don't know. Like, maybe when the season starts, he'll try to flip the switch. I hope he still has power there. At 31 years old, I don't know what he's going to give you. Like, I don't expect the 14 and a half sacks Mario Williams at this point, but they definitely need someone to get Mario Williams to get close to about double-digit sacks there. Linebacking core. Kiko, I'm not a big fan of Kiko Alonso anyway. I think he's a very small linebacker, especially just looking at him and seeing him in the locker room. And he had that great year in Buffalo, and just haven't been able to stay healthy and hasn't gave you much production since. So I don't know what they're gonna do there at that position. Secondary is also a question there. So looking at that tape, and I've seen the game multiple times now, just since last Friday. It wasn't a lot to take from the defense. So hopefully tomorrow against the Falcons, which they're gonna have some issues there, especially covering Julio Jones. They, hopefully they'll be able to at least keep them in front. Hopefully they don't let Julio break for a big gain and a big play, because Julio of course has the tendency to do that because that's just who he is, and he's arguably the best receiver in the game, if not at least after Antonio Brown, he definitely is. So I'm curious to see how they face a big target like him because they're gonna have to face big targets like that throughout the course of the season, especially in the division where you got Brandon Marshall, Eric Decker, obviously Gronk, and Martellus Bennett with the Patriots and with the Bills. Sammy Watkins is not a big guy, but he's a guy that has really owned the Dolphins when he's played them. So I'm curious to see what happens with that particular matchup with the Falcons tomorrow.
Okay, so now let me ask you this, Antoine, because I want to touch on something that you brought up. You talked about Mario Williams not being as productive because he's starting to get older and whatever, but it was not even 2 seasons ago, that would make him 29, that he was 14 sack Mario Williams. So, what happens when you hit the magical number 30? Is that, suddenly everything just starts going wrong all at once?
Well, I don't, that's hard to answer. When you look at somebody like Cam Wade, until he got hurt last year, he was a guy that was very productive. Even after he turned 30, Cam is he's on his way to 35, halfway to 35 years old right now. And even last year, before he got hurt, he was having a fantastic run, run a stretch of 3 games. He had 7 sacks in 3 games, which is just phenomenal. So I don't know. I think a lot of it has to do with the way you prepare, the way you take care of yourself, what you eat, train. And I'm not saying Mario. I don't know. I hadn't covered Mario Williams prior to this year, so I can't say I know what he's doing or what he has done in the past. But you look at last year, and I know they played in a 3-4 scheme with Buffalo, and that's not his fit, but what really was very, very alarming to me was just the fact that he gave up on plays so easily. And he just became frustrated and just kind of said, to heck with it, and just didn't put out maximum effort. That's my biggest thing. Do I think he's going to have a much better year this year? Yeah, yes, I do. But how much better? I don't know. I don't know. I don't see that 14.5 sacks guy this year, with the Dolphins, but they don't necessarily need him. Like I say, you got Sue. I don't know how much you're going to get from Cameron Wake, even though I know they're going to limit his snaps this year. But even then, you can still have a potential to get 7 or 8 sacks from him. And you got those 3 former Pro Bowlers. It really takes pressure off of him. So to answer your question, I guess Father Time really, you really don't have a question for it. You really don't have an answer for what happens when people just break down or the production just goes down. So I'm curious to see Kenny become that Pro Bowl type player because you look at Mario Williams' career, he's on the cusp of making the Hall of Fame. If he has really 2 or 3 more good seasons, he could be in Canton one day. Like you said, 96 sacks right now, and he can reach that double-digit plateau again, probably a couple more times. Then I think we could be talking about a guy that eventually has a bust in Canton one day.
All right, so I understand that you can't really explain Father Time. It's just tough for me to imagine that just age and attrition is the reason Mario Williams is not showing off what he used to be able to do. At least it wasn't like it was 6 years ago. It was just 2, and one of those years he was given up on Rex.
That's true. But we've seen this. It's not like this will be the first time it happened.
No,
that's all I'm saying. It's happened in the past. Do I think he gave up on Rex Ryan? Yeah, I do. I think part of, like I say, most of it has a lot to do with that too. I just think that there's something I'm seeing something. He seemed like a step slow to me. I'm not saying that might not be the case. It could be he's taking it easy, but when you talk about a guy that, like I said, took it easy all of last year, like that's kind of a little bit of alarming. And according to him, he has something to prove.
Yeah, and hopefully, I'll say this. I imagine that when the Buffalo games show up, superstar Mario Williams is going to come back. That's just what that's what I expect. It's like,
yeah, he definitely could be. Or yeah, he's going to have a lot of motivation. I would definitely say that. The Bills definitely have a good offensive line, but he's definitely going to be highly motivated for that game.
Yeah, I do too. One thing too, just you guys got to keep in mind is Dallas may have the best offensive line in the NFL. So
yeah.
I mean, I think it's kind of a touch of reality. Everybody's been how good our defensive line is, but they went up against a very good offensive line, and obviously they didn't just manhandle them. It kind of went the other way in the run game in particular. But like I said, I think watching this Falcons game, I'm concerned. I share Antoine's concerns about Mario Williams, but you really don't know when you get these guys that have been in the league that long. Most of them don't go too crazy in the preseason because they want to keep their bodies ready for opening day. And we'll know a lot, after the Seattle game, who's for real and who's for not. So, but we'll have to see. I do think Wake is chomping at the bit. Cameron Wake can't wait to start chasing quarterbacks.
Oh, believe me, he's been wanting to play ever since he got hurt.
I know, but he just looks phenomenal shape-wise. So I think they're just being very careful.
He is. I saw that up and close and personal yesterday.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Like how I can't imagine his training regimens for his age to be where he's at physically. But
Wake will be a.
He doesn't eat. I'll tell you this: like he knows what everything he puts in his body, everything. Like he is a freak. Like the shapes, like everything. Like it is just so it's crazy. It's ridiculous. Like I assume it's something like the regimen that people say Tom Brady's on, but it is crazy. It's crazy, phenomenal. Like everything is like organic. It's crazy. Like I can't imagine eating like that all the time.
I went to the mom's clinic just a couple months ago, and I've seen the normal day of food that a football player has. So for Cameron Wake, I mean, you'd think they were feeding an army, and I guess in a way they are.
Well, calorie-wise, he probably burns him out of an army with all his workouts. But I do think that's a piece people aren't quite seeing unleashed yet, because as I was mentioning, when you play a lot more press coverage, you need to be able to get to the quarterback, and he will be a key piece when Miami needs a guy that can pressure the quarterback. Having Cam Wake's going to be very, very nice. So I think they know that, and they want to give him all the possible time to be 100%.
I'm just hoping, like, just as far as Cameron Wake goes, what I'm hoping is that Adam Gase will. I don't want to say that he's scared to let him play, but honestly, it feels like anybody who has danger of being hurt or is at risk of being hurt, he keeps leaving them out of games because I really don't want this guy to get hurt before the regular season. But you know what? That also adds this extra bit of questions when the actual season starts. Like, you would want to see Cameron Wake get a little bit of a warm-up time, if you will, just to say, all right, Cam, here you go. We're going to get you ready. Just a little bit of time to get yourself ready before the real thing happens. You got to let him warm up a little.
Yeah, that's what I agree. I was mentioning, Lewis. That's Gase's. Every coach is different, and that's one thing you see is how they conduct their preseasons. And when Tony Sparano was here, he was much more along the lines of let's get very, very, very physical in the preseason, and the Bill Parcells mentality that you got to be preparing for very physical football games. And so when you take that approach, people get hurt more often in the preseason. And Gase, I think, has been much more along the lines of I want to keep my top players physically ready to go on opening day. And it's going to be interesting to see which approach is the right approach.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And like it's definitely different than a lot of coaches that I've dealt with in the past have done. Like I would expect to see him. I didn't expect to see him the first preseason game. I did last week against Dallas. Of course, that didn't happen. Of course, he's a game time decision tomorrow. I do think he'll play at least some, not a whole lot. We obviously know he's not going to play next Thursday against the Titans. So this is really his last opportunity to get some kind of reps in and snaps in before they have to go to Seattle. So I would like, me personally, I think he should play at least a little bit. Like you want him out there, you're going out there at least somewhat to get him ready for Seattle in a couple of weeks. Because
you give him a couple series.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like you just don't want to have him go out there for the first time since his Achilles injury against Seattle on a hostile territory. I know he's going to be jacked. And he's really going to be jacked up. So y'all would rather him just get all those nerves and everything out now as opposed to just waiting 2 weeks, especially when you're on the road against such a tough opponent in the Seahawks.
Unless that's Gase's plan. Like I love how you just said that, how he's going to be all jacked up. Consider this. Adam Gase is keeping him out, so he's wound up like a coiled spring for when Seattle, and he just explodes all at once.
Well, that could work both ways, too.
Yeah,
It could work good, and it also be a bad thing as well. So that was kind of my thing, too. Like, yeah, you like to see Cam Wake pumped up, but players could get too amped up to the fact that they're missing plays. They're not doing exactly. They're not in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I say, that could work. That could work against them as well.
Yeah.
I think too, Lewis, that I don't think you're going to see Cam Wake from a snap standpoint do a lot of snaps even when the season starts. I honestly think they're planning on Branch and Williams being the starting DNs, and Wake is going to come in when they know the teams have to throw the football. And that's when you get into those third and fourth quarters and the game starts to get tight, and then you've got a Cam Wake that you can just send after the quarterback. That's going to be pretty crazy because you're used to seeing Cam Wake, play a lot of snaps and be worn down a little. And we're going to see maybe Cam Wake playing, maybe 50% of the snaps he played before or less. His primary role will be you rush the quarterback. And that's what he does, better than almost anybody in the NFL.
Yeah. I think you're going to see a lot of rotation in the defensive line anyway. Because we've seen it the past couple of years, even going back to the second half of the 2014 season, they've gotten worn down, especially the second half of the season. And they had their inability to stop the run, and they look gassed at times. So the way you combat that is to rotate a lot of different guys in, have guys more fresher for the fourth quarter. And I think you're gonna see Cam in certain passing situations early in the game where they really believe it's gonna be a pass, and definitely in the fourth quarter. So. And I think that's cool. That's what they want to use him as. Cam is definitely one of the best pass rushers in the game when he's healthy. And I think it's gonna I think that's a good benefit to just have a lot of different guys rotate, even for Sue at times, because everybody needs a break, especially those guys being upwards to 280, 300 pounds. You don't want them in there the entire time if you can. So you definitely want to rotate a lot of different guys out and be fresh for the remaining of the game.
Yeah, and
one thing. Well, we're kind of in that positional topic, and I don't know what insight Antoine or you have, Lewis, but obviously they've been playing Chris McCain, kind of as that role we're talking about as the guy that just rushes the passer. Right? Chris McCain, under no way is he big enough to do an every down defensive end. He won't be able to hold up against the run. I just don't think he has the size, but he clearly has a natural ability to rush the passer. And so what I'm wondering and what I'm hearing around camp is what is that depth chart going to look like? Because Deion Jordan obviously has not even sniffed the football field. He's rehabbing his knee. He hasn't played in easily over a year. And obviously the guy's loaded with talent. As we start getting into cuts, are you guys hearing or do you think Deion Jordan is going to be on this team or how do you think that's going to play out?
What I'm understanding is from what I hear, he'll be on the PUP list, and he's not going to play in at least the first 6 games. He's still recovering from his knee injury. He has not practiced since he's gotten back. He really told the team he had a knee injury. Bottom line, he had a knee injury coming in before he got reinstated. The team found out once he came back. The team had no idea. Adam Gates, nobody.
Well, he couldn't tell anybody. So
yeah, well. He could, but he decided not to really.
So it wasn't that. It wasn't the whole you're not allowed until you're not allowed to talk until you're reinstated thing.
No. He could have told him if he wanted to. And they would have given him the proper. He should have been more alert with the team. He should have told somebody with the team. Even when he got reinstated, they didn't know until he got here. Once he got reinstated, then. He still didn't tell him until he actually physically got there. And then they had not seen him. They had not talked to him before he got on the plane, any of that. So that's kind of the whole thing with that. And
he's looking out for himself. So,
of course. And of course they're looking out for himself.
You got to.
But yeah. Like I said, I understand it from his point of view, but at the same time, how did he get hurt? Like none of the reporters actually really know how he got hurt either. I'm sure they have an idea how he got hurt, but the bottom line is we're not going to see Deion Jordan this year, or like not in the first 6 games, if at all, this year. So we can go ahead and scratch that out as well. All right.
Okay.
As far as the other depth chart guys, it's going to be an interesting decision. Like you got Terrence Fede, obviously became. I like Chris Jones. I think he's brought a lot to the team as well.
Yep.
Jason Jones, I really like as well. They got some depth there. They got some guys that they may not be top front guys, but they got guys that are good. Like you can rotate in and out of the game and give you certain things throughout the course of a football game. So
they got a lot of Jones. Is what they got.
Yeah, they do. They definitely do. But I like the depth that they have. This is something they hadn't had in the past, and I think this is definitely going to be it's a good problem to have, to be completely honest. So I'm curious. Like after tomorrow, I'll have a better idea. I'm going to put together my top 53 players on Friday, that list, and kind of just roll from it there. But I have a pretty good idea. I don't want to reveal it yet, but I have a pretty good idea of the guys that I believe are going to make the roster.
Yeah, and I already tried to do it for the USA Today folks.
Brandon was telling me about that on was it yesterday?
Yeah, I'm already wrong on a ton of stuff because like I wrote it down and then sudden developments turned out that made me wrong. Like I didn't have Kenyon Drake on the list, so all of a sudden Kenyon Drake is active again and he's doing stuff. So it's like, oh great. So it's like, so that's wrong. Well, James Michael Johnson, he's hurt. Oh great. So that's wrong too.
The thing about the running back position is going to be another area where it's going to be interesting as well, especially with P doing so well, and now you got Drake back. And do you cut a 3rd round pick, or do you put him on the how do you handle that as well?
I honestly don't think they could do either. I don't think you can cut or you can't stash Drake. I know he's been hurt, but he'll get claimed. I don't see any way he'll stay on. He's just too talented. But
I agree with that.
Man, I don't know. I right now it's going to be so tough because of guys like if Deion Jordan is on the PUP, that makes a lot more sense. But if you're going to keep some extra guys at other positions, the running backs kind of have this who do you keep mentality because Pete has looked the best in terms of the backups. Obviously, Ajayi and Foster are going to be the 1 and 2 backs to start the season, but after that, you start to think, well, if you don't have the talent, should you only keep 3 backs? But, then you got Drake, and Drake hasn't played at all, and Pete's looked good. And so I
think Damian Williams has looked really good as well at times. So
yeah,
I don't think he's going anywhere either.
I don't know, Antoine. It's like in practice he balls out, and then he shows up at game time, and it's like, eh.
Yeah.
But
they really like him. They really like his skill set, what he brings to the table, and like his versatility. So
is it pass protection?
Going
is it the pass protection that's keeping him ahead?
Yes. Yeah, that has a lot. He's the best pass protector they have at running back. So
better than Foster?
That has a lot to do with it. Well, Foster's good too. I agree with that. Foster is good too, but yeah, he does that, and he can play fullback. And I'll tell you this: like they've lined him up at fullback, and he's done a really good job there as well. So that could be. That's something intriguing, especially in Adam Gates' head. Like that's a way you can have a fullback without actually having one on the roster.
Yeah.
Well, the Earl Mitchell experiment is proof of that, but I digress.
He's not a fullback. I don't know though. That's got to be a neck and neck battle right now going into this game. Pete and Damian Williams right now because Pete has outplayed him in highlights anyway, and so it's close.
Pete is a weapon, and Williams is protection. He's a shield. It's kind of like It's like kind of like picking between the sword and the shield. Which one do you want? Do you want the defense or do you want the offense?
Yeah, but the reality is they're fighting for a 4th back for those two right now.
Yeah.
I can't imagine they're going to keep 5 running backs.
No way.
No.
And they've already got specialty players. They got like Jakeem Grant. Jakeem Grant's not really a wide receiver. They'll use him here and there, but he's going to make
specialty player.
Yeah,
he's just kind of like a specialty guy for me.
So when you get specialty players like that, that's a roster spot, and so you kind of look at Jakeem Grant. He might line up in the backfield, once or twice in a game, in a special formation or something. And so I don't know. That makes it hard to keep a guy like Pede, you know what I mean, as a 4th or 5th running back when you got to have some of these specialty players they have on the team, because Gase seems to kind of like that type of player, a utility player, and so when you do that, that's an extra roster spot or two. So that got to come from somewhere. I'm just not quite sure where yet.
Yeah, yeah. Now you can say that. That's a good point. And like Grant has, I'm curious to see how he plays and how much they play him this week. Obviously, a lot of people were clamoring on Twitter like they didn't see a whole lot of him last week, and obviously they didn't. So I think he'll get some more PT and kind of used in a different way against Atlanta as well. So yeah, they got some tough
He
decisions
is
to
fun
make.
to watch. My goodness, you guys have seen him a lot in practice, but I hadn't seen a lot of him until I was watching him in the games, and he is unbelievably quick. I know he's little, but he looks like
Yes.
a whole other gear out there. Like he's playing out there with NFL players, unbelievable athletes, and he is putting jukes on them and outrunning them. Like it's just amazing. So
What was the scouting report? It was like trying to tackle smoke.
I guess so.
Yeah,
I know he's
something like
little,
that.
but I have a feeling Gase is going to have some fun plays ready for him for some teams.
Oh yeah, oh definitely. You could use him kind of in the same mode. I remember San Diego when they first got Darren Sproles.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously he's faster than Sproles, but kind of use him in the same type of way they did as well. So I definitely think they have some things cooking for the way they can use Grant as well.
I'm hoping that they actually pull it off because you know what, Antoine and Chad, like people keep saying, "Oh, well, we'll make the comparison to Darren Sproles. We'll use him like a Darren Sproles." But you know what? The only person who's been able to be used like Darren Sproles, like successfully, has been Darren Sproles. I haven't seen any team actually succeed in recreating the Darren Sproles thing.
They tried. They tried. I remember Gase brought up. I don't know if you remember this guy, Trendon Holiday, who the Broncos. He played for the Broncos and the Texans, and he was unbelievable. I think he was even faster than Grant. Actually, he was like a track star at LSU and big returner or whatever. And Gates and the Denver offense tried to create plays for him, but he just was never interested. He just wanted to be a straight returner. At least with Grant, he has heart. Like he wants to do whatever. He's down to do whatever Gates is playing for him, whether it be lining up in the backfield, being a receiver, punt return, kick return, however he can get the ball. That's how he's down for the cause. So I definitely think that I don't know if he's gonna be as successful as Dan Sproles. Nobody does. But if you can get him the ball a couple of times a game and he can maybe break a big game and shorten the field for you, that's a big benefit to have on any team's roster.
I'm hoping that we get something there.
I think, honestly, guys, I predict by assuming he stays healthy by the middle of the year, people are not going to be punting to him.
Are you assuming he's going to get squashed, Chad?
No, I think that's the only thing that holds him. I mean, you can compare him to Darren Sproles is legitimately a third down back. He can carry the football. Jakeem Grant's just so little. You can't plan on slamming him into the line ever. He's just not that big. But in terms of a weapon, though, like you watch what he does on punt return and stuff. If I'm a team playing him, exactly what Antoine said. I don't want to have him rip off a 40-yard punt return on me and give the Dolphins the ball on the 30. I think by the middle of the season, people are going to try to avoid giving him the ball on special teams. I think he's that explosive.
Yeah, Matt Dar's done that too because Matt Dar has really pinned him to the sideline whenever they do special teams drills, which I think is funny.
The scrimmage in the
he
bubble.
already knows. Yeah,
he already in the bubble. He kept hitting the top of the bubble. Like you can't get any practice in.
Yeah, with the bubble, yeah, like that was very frustrating when they were in the bubble.
But yeah, but Antoine's making the point. He's not even giving Grant like a full field to work with. He's trying to keep him. If you're going to field it, it's going to be your tight on the sideline or just going out of bounds. You're not going to get a full field to make our team look slow.
Maybe that's an exercise in relaxing and slowing down because they keep telling Grant he's moving too fast.
He is. Like he doesn't understand how to move slower and then hit that. It's kind of like playing a video game. Like you have the speed button, and he always hits the speed button. The button, like his finger's always on the speed button.
Yeah,
whereas
hit the turbo.
It doesn't always have to be. Like just take the ball, go, and then eventually when you see some room, then you hit the speed button. Like he's just too fast. He doesn't understand how to. He doesn't need to use all of his speed at the same time, like all the time. He doesn't need to go 100% with his speed. He can go. He's so fast. He can go 80%, like at times, and then just crank it up when he has to.
I recall a play against the Giants. He was doing a return, I think, and he actually ran past his blocker. before the blocker made the block. So that's a good example there of wait for your guy to do his thing.
Yeah, just be patient.
It all just depends how they use him. And I know you guys are focusing on Sproles a lot, but a guy he may be a little more similar to is Warwick Dunn. I don't know if you remember him from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but he was a guy that had that extra gear all the time. And I think it was John Gruden used to find creative ways to get him the ball in space. And it's very, very difficult for teams to game plan against that stuff. So I'm hoping we get some of that type of play calling.
Well, anyway, Antoine, you got a little more time in you, buddy?
Yeah, I got to come about 10 more minutes. I can spare.
All right, thanks. Actually, I want to go back to the defensive side of the ball and something else that you brought up. Missed tackles. Now, I don't even know how serious I should take this, but I did get a question from what's his name? It was Andy M. Coelho. That's right. He made the suggestion that these teams can't actually tackle anymore because of the new CBA. Now, I don't know how serious I should take that, but there is the question of, has tackling become something of a lost art? Because it looks like hear me out. I noticed that Mike Hall is really good at tackling. Shamil Gary, pretty darn good at tackling. But these are young guys who haven't been out of college for very long, and they are still developing, if you will. It almost seems like that once they get to the NFL, suddenly the whole tackling thing seems to be drained out of them. So I don't know if maybe they're not teaching tackling anymore. I don't know if maybe they're not working on... for real though, does the new CBA say you shouldn't tackle as hard as you would in college?
Well, let me break it down for everybody. There's only a certain amount of days you can work in pads throughout the week, especially throughout the regular season or the course of a year. Like, they give you a specific number, so you can't, if you're working in shorts and kind of shoulder pads, you're not going to tackle. That's just kind of how it is. You're just going to touch a guy and then he's down. So in college, of course, it's different. You're seeing more live tackling. In the NFL, you're not necessarily seeing that until they put the pads on, which is normally once a week for the guys. They just have full pads on once a week once the season starts, unless some coaches want to give the players a rest week or whatever, where they don't put pads on until they play on Sunday. So that has a lot to do with it as well. The way tackling is taught has really changed a lot. I think with the fact that they're teaching the concussion whole thing and keeping your head up and things of that nature, and penalties, the nature of penalties as well. People are not trying to get personal fouls and things like that as well. That's changed as well. Just the whole sport has changed as far as tackling. Now, does they give players a pass, not to try to work on it? It's ways you can work on it without necessarily tackling somebody. Obviously, that would be the best way to do it. But I just looking at practice, the way teams practice it now. I just don't think that they practice enough. You should, especially a team as bad as the Dolphins have been, tackling wise. And like I said, this has been going on for years. Since I've been covering the team, and this is my fourth year covering the team. They've had the inability to tackle, especially during the second half of the season. I don't know if it's effort. I don't know if it's the fact that they're tired or gas or whatever the case may be, or technique. I think it's kind of a combination of all three. But yeah, I think these teams should work on that a little bit more, especially when you have to pass on, because it's so and people are trying to shoulder block. I saw that last week in the game. They're trying to blow people up and not even trying to wrap up, and I'm like, dude,
yeah, that's baloney. That don't work.
Yeah, that's what dude, wrap up. You don't have to go through a drill to know, instead of trying to hit with your shoulder, wrap up. I saw that a few times last week. I'm just it just makes you shake your head.
Well, I'm wondering here, hang on, Antoine, is it possible that they are worried about getting nailed for a helmet-to-helmet call? Because if you hit with the shoulder, then you're going to hit with the shoulder pad. But if you wrap up, you have a danger of hitting with the head, and that gets everybody into trouble.
Yeah, that goes back to what I said, saying, as far as they're worried about penalties. That's definitely a concern, and fines. Because we're talking about grown men, and you're talking about them getting fined $50,000, maybe $25,000, $50,000 first offense, or depending on how the severe the hit was, maybe close to $100,000. And they're taking money out of their own pocket and family's pocket as well, and nobody wants to get fined. like everybody wants to keep their money, but yeah, they're definitely afraid of not only costing their team points and penalty like yardage, as far as getting fined as well. So yeah, that's definitely a concern as well.
I think it's legitimate, Lewis, that if you looked at even some of the players in the past that are considered maybe great, players, like even somebody like Ronnie Lott or Steve Atwater, the game's changed so much that you fundamentally, if you can't tackle, you're going to struggle because they used to even call those guys headhunters because they were so good at coming in and blowing people up, and you can't anymore. If you're not going to hit somebody helmet to helmet, you're just going to come in and slam into them. You're not going to accomplish a whole lot. And so it is Antoine's exactly right. There's such a fundamental change in the game on how you tackle, and it's it's a fine line because right now you have all the problems with knee injuries because so many guys are going low, but you're almost given no choice because you can't hit helmet to helmet on somebody. And so I don't know how the NFL is going to address that the reality is football is a violent sport and people get hurt constantly at it. And so if you can't be violent and can't be aggressive on tackling, it kind of turns into this league where the tackling is not very good because it's so difficult to do anymore.
Yeah, touch football. That's exactly what it's like. You're gonna turn it into.
And you know what? It really feels like this is becoming more sensitive over I almost want to go into a little bit deeper kind of a situation here because this is kind of like a society thing. Because like 20 years ago, this whole we're gonna sue you for everything you're worth, NFL. Look what you did to us. The whole Junior Seau thing really sparked a lot of controversy. As time has passed, the NFL has found itself having to conform to what society wants. This whole NFL is violence, and you shouldn't and you shouldn't solve things with violence. Like, who's solving anything with violence? You're not going to go and play. You're not going to go and tackle a guy like an NFL player if somebody doesn't get mad at you. That's common sense. Lack of common sense in society mixed with the whole everybody's super sensitive to everything has forced the NFL to conform to what society wants. They want it to be less violent. They want everybody to play nice and be happy with each other. The whole rivalries of teams, oh, we hate each other, those are gone now because you have to be good sports to everybody. We have to show on camera that we as soon as the game is over, we're all friends again. And that's not what football used to be. And because the NFL has been forced to conform to society, now tackling is difficult because you can't tackle here and you can't tackle this way and you can't tackle here, you can't tackle there, you can't do this and you can't do that. So essentially you are relegated to only one way of doing things, and at that point it becomes less and less about your effort, less and less about whether you get there in time or whether you can even make the tackle to begin with. It becomes more about, okay, let me see if I can just get this guy to kind of run into me and then I'll slow him down and that'll work. That it doesn't work. That's why the resurgence, I feel like that's why the resurgence of running backs has started to come up in this league, because since you can't really tackle these guys anymore, once you get a full head of steam, then really what's the point of passing the football? All you got to do is just run it every 5 seconds and you're going to get like 6 yards per carry because you're not allowed to tackle really hard anymore.
Yeah, well, this is all valid points, Louis. The NFL has just become so popular in sports in the United States. It's just so many people follow it, and it's such a big event that I think a lot of times the NFL has to take on issues because of just the scale of what it is. Because, I mean, as an example, UFC Ultimate Fighting, you can't tell me those guys aren't constantly getting concussions, the way they're hitting and kicking each other in the head. But you don't hear controversy all the time about the UFC causing brain damage. I mean, how could it not be? And so there's always going to be that medium of, if obviously now that the players know you are going to get concussions, you're going to get knee injuries, you're going to potentially develop, trouble later in life. And the players themselves, they just have to make conscious decisions on, where are you at physically with things, and what are you going to do, if you're 28, 29, 32, you have to decide where you're at physically and how long you want to play the sport. And that's there's risks associated with it. That's just not going to go. There's nothing you can do to change the game to make it not have risks of injuries like that.
Yep.
And so It's either that or you play touch football and nobody will show up to watch it. That's really what your options
Exactly. Nobody's going to show up to watch flag football. That's just not going to happen. But this also rests on the shoulders of the players a little bit, because you saw how many players was it, former players, that came out and sued the NFL because of injury related accidents and injury related this and that and blah 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 blah. It's like, you signed up for this. You came into the NFL to make millions of dollars for yourselves because you supposedly you love the game, and B, because you wanted to provide for your family, and that's what you were good at. You signed up for this. So
Well, yeah. There's a
I'll say
medium in there,
this.
Lewis, because a lot of those people are suing them because the NFL understood they were getting concussions. What became clear, what people didn't realize, is if you get multiple concussions, like several in a row, that it leads to issues later in life. And so I think a lot of the lawsuits are like, yeah, we knew we were getting concussions, but we had no idea that we were going to have all these problems later
that's
in life.
common sense, Chad.
Here's what I'll say.
Well,
Here's what I'll say. Here's what I'll say. Like, the guys that played in, like, Mike Ditka's era and earlier, they wasn't getting paid a lot of money. So I can understand why they're upset, because they're looking, they have all these injuries and things like that, and they're looking to get more of a pension and get more money, especially considering if they have, brain damage or things like that. The players today that are getting millions of dollars, they have no excuse, because one, you need to plan for your future, and you need to hold yourself accountable. You understand, like, this is a violent game. You're gonna get hurt. You may suffer injuries later on in life, but that's the risk you take. You want to play this game. You want to make millions of dollars. You want to be famous and things like that. Then I don't have much sympathy for the players that are playing today. The boys that played, like I say, 40s, 50s, 60s, that era, 70s even, like, they wasn't getting paid a lot of money. Some of them had to have second jobs in the off season, just to make things meet. I have sympathy for them, because they were playing much harder, and one, they didn't necessarily know the effects of football, and two, well, they probably did, but not necessarily to this extent. And two, like I said, they wouldn't get paid a lot of money. So I have a lot more respect for them, and I have more sympathy for them, as opposed to somebody that's coming up like late 90s, 2000s, and even beyond, like today.
Yeah, I equate it a lot to, like, smoking. If you're talking about somebody that was smoking in the 1920s or 1930s, they at that time had no idea, like, how,
or chewing tobacco with baseball.
how bad it was for you. They didn't realize it. But if you're talking about somebody now, like if you see somebody that's 25 and they're going into a gas station and buying cigarettes, that's fine. That's their choice. But they know full well what the consequences are of smoking. And so it's very, very similar to what you're saying with a football player is you obviously realize that if you get concussions, that it's bad for you. And that's when I said it kind of falls back to the players now. The NFL is doing everything they can from a technology standpoint, and they're tweaking the rules the best they can to help prevent concussions. But as a player, if you've had 2 or 3 concussions, you got to start to decide on your own body, do I want to keep doing this? And in particular, if you've made a pretty good amount of money, I think you have to start considering, if you're, 27 and you've had 3 or 4 concussions and you've made a few $1,000,000, it might be in your best interest just not to play anymore physically. I mean, even though you have the talent, that's the decision they really got to make each individually, if that makes sense.
It comes down to, you knew the job was dangerous when you took it. I agree. I understand your point from the people back then, Antoine. I totally get you, and you have a very valid point. It was back then. The doctors weren't as good as they are today, and equipment wasn't as great. It was playing harder. Yes, they have a point, but now it's becoming more and more like, if I can find a way to hurt myself, NFL, even though it is a violent game, you have to help me in return, because I am like the players. It's weird. It's kind of like this weird players union versus the owners thing that's going on here. The players, yes, everybody comes to watch the players. The owners, nobody cares about what the owners are doing. In fact, if the owner's name is in people's mouths, it's usually a problem, aka Stephen Ross. I know a lot of people who really don't like him, and they keep harassing me every day about it. But anyway, the players feel like without them, there is no NFL. And yes, that is true. But at the same time, the NFL is, for all intents and purposes, the company that they are employees of. And you have to abide by the rules of the company. It's any job in the world, you have to follow the rules of the company. Antoine, you have to follow the rules of your company. You can't just go off and do whatever you want, and if your boss tells you to do something else, correct?
Yeah, I wish I could, but no, I cannot.
But so that's what they signed up for. Here are the rules of the company that you are working for. And this is what you signed up for. If I'm a construction worker, I did not sign up for a zombie apocalypse. No, you may have a point to sue there. But if you get hurt because a hammer fell on your foot and you were the one who dropped it, you can't really sue for that.
Yeah, I think the hardest part with the concussion issues, Lewis, is it just doesn't play out fairly. I mean, you look at Ryan Tannehill, and he's been body slammed, punched, kicked, bit, everything you can think of for the last
blood.
5 years. And Matt Moore comes in a preseason game, he plays a few snaps and boom, he got his concussion. So I think that's the hard thing, is you just don't know when they're going to happen, and it does happen. But that's just going to be a recurring issue that it'll be politically going on. But I think for most football fans, they don't want to see the game diluted down to the point it doesn't have that edge to it anymore. And I think on the social level, people are saying, "Oh, it's just too violent. It's just too violent." And so that's going to clash for a while yet, probably.
It's the eternal battle, and I think if you really think about it, I think that has a lot to do with why tackling seems to be a dying art. So kudos to Mike Hull and Shamil Gary, because they still know how to tackle. I think they should probably do the instructions. Here's how you let Mike Hull be a coach for one day. Here's how you tackle, guys. Let's tell Andre Branch and Kiko Alonso, go watch Mike Hull tackle for a little while. Learn how to do it again. All right, Antoine, do you got to go, man?
Yeah, I got to get out of here.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on with us. Really, really appreciate it.
All right, y'all guys take it easy and enjoy the game tomorrow.
All right, well.
Thanks, Antoine. Hope you have a good season.
All right, y'all take care.
He'll be back. All right, so that was Antoine Staley of Athlon Sports, or the Palm Beach Post, whichever one you want to go with. And I mean, I kind of don't want to dwell on this topic anymore, Chad. But the more I think about it, the more it kind of just gets to me. I honestly didn't think I was going to take the question very seriously, but apparently now that it's up, I feel obligated to say stuff like this. It's like, you signed up for this, so you need to learn. You need to know how to tackle. I understand wanting to protect yourself, protect your family, protect your investment. Yes, that's true. But guess what? If you don't know how to tackle, people aren't going to think you're good enough. And if people don't think you're good enough, you're not going to get a paycheck, because they're not going to sign you. So you kind of it's this incredible juggling of what do you need to focus on. And if I'm the Miami Dolphins players, if I'm players on any football team, I am making sure that I make those tackles, because you know what? At this point, making tackles is a highlight. You almost expect people to miss tackles nowadays, and it's the most annoying thing in the world. So when you do make a tackle, see Mike Hull, suddenly everybody loves this kid, and they want to see what he can do when he gets more opportunities with the starting lineup. And the fact of the matter is, if the only thing he's good at is tackling, I love Mike Hull, don't get me wrong, he's a great developmental player, and I think he's worth investing in, but he's mainly good at tackling. He's still got a long way to go before he's going to be covering people like Rob Gronkowski or charging after Tony Romo in the pocket. He's got a long way to go, but apparently just getting some tackles done is enough for the fan base to go incredibly insane for him.
No, I don't think it's unjustified. Ever since Mike Hall's been here, he's been impressive.
Well, that's my point, Chad. That's my point. That's my point. He's been impressive, but what has he been impressive doing? Tackling. Which seems fundamental.
Absolutely. I think he can cover too. I think the issue Mike Hall's had is he's not foot speed. Like, if you line him up on a 40, he's not going to be that impressive running a 40, and he's also a little bit undersized. He's not a real big linebacker.
So why can he tackle but Kiko Alonso can't? Or Jelani Jenkins?
I think tackling has a lot of instinct to it, and it has a lot of aggression. It just how aggressively do you want to play? And I'm making the point with Kiko. I'm not quite sure yet, because I remember watching him with Buffalo, and he was unbelievably aggressive when he was playing really well. And you have to wonder psychologically. The last 2 years he's had some major injuries, And I'm guessing he doesn't want to get in that scenario where, you get into the last preseason game and he, blows his knee up or something like that. So my impression is he's being a little bit careful. And so the real question is, at what point do you take those training wheels off and go out and start being a wild man again and tackling people all over the field? Because if you're not able to do that, then your days are done in the NFL. I mean, you need to hang it up because you just physically aren't ready to put your body through that. And I think you see that on the field right now with Mike Hull. Is he's sticking his nose in there and he's tackling people. And in my opinion, he's looking the best right now at the linebackers. But I'm taking that into account that one is he's not going against the starters, so he's not going against the same level of competition, in the second, third, fourth quarter. And two is Kiko Alonso just been being a little careful, and when it gets real, it'll be time to turn it on. I think this game coming up is going to be the closest you're going to get to seeing what's real and what's not real, because it's time for Arian Foster. He needs to get ready for the regular season, and so he needs to show up and play like he's playing a regular season game. Same goes for Kiko Alonso, Mario Williams. I'm expecting these guys to perform pretty well and effort-wise be going all out in this Atlanta game for a half. If they're not, then I think that concern level starts to really rise that, are these guys just not, they just don't have it anymore, so to speak. So it's going to probably be the most important preseason game for the Dolphins because of Gase's approach. I feel like they've been so careful and so conservative. That's all fine and good, but this is the game they got to get ready to play, because you don't use the last preseason game to go all out, to see who's ready and who's not. And so this is it right here. This half of football coming up against Atlanta is going to determine the majority of the starters. So that's something everybody should be watching. Are these guys that, is it effort or is it careful? And that's the medium we're trying to figure out here.
Absolutely. We actually have some questions in the YouTube chat room. I keep forgetting that's a thing, so I'm going to have to put an increased focus on that, like the Dolphins are putting increased focus on red zone scoring. So sorry about that, guys, in the chat room. Okay, Mr. 305 Max, is it possible for Dolphins to go 9-7 this year? Yeah, can they? Yes. Will they? Is a different story altogether. This Dolphins offense, if Laramie Tunsil holds up at left guard, which I believe he will because he's a stud, I believe the Dolphins offense is going to be much, much, much better than what it was in the last couple of seasons. Even Tannehill's quote unquote breakout year, the first year with Bill Lazor, if the pass protection holds up, I expect it to be better, if only because Tannehill's going to have time to throw the football. We have all witnessed what Tannehill can do when he has time in the pocket to go through his progressions, look at the reads, and do all this amazing stuff. Like great. I keep thinking this parody here, parallel here. Tom Brady, when he has his Great Wall of Foxborough up, he's the best quarterback in the NFL. I hate to say that because it's freaking Tom Brady and the New England Patriots and Miami Dolphins fan and all that other stuff, and even Miami Dolphins up and coming journalists and blah blah blah. I'm still not gonna like the Patriots because that's just in my blood. But Tom Brady's the best quarterback in the league when that line is working. The first 4 weeks of 2014, I will never forget it. There were actually people in the media and NFL Network suggesting that has Tom Brady finally reached his end? Why were they saying that? Because he wasn't performing. Why was that? Because people were getting in his pocket and making him get happy feet. He doesn't know what to do with himself when there's consistently pressure coming at him. And why is that? Because he's not used to it. He's used to having a wall of people just letting him sit back there for 3 hours so he can order a pizza, do all the things that he needs to do. He can call up Giselle and say, hey, are we still on for tonight? And then when it goes away, suddenly Tom Brady looks very un-Tom Brady. And then week 5 of 2014, I don't know what they did really, but somehow that offensive line got itself together, gave Tom Brady time, and suddenly everybody had forgotten about this whole situation, and they had tried to play it off like, what, did we say that Tom Brady was dead? We never said that, really. That was ridiculous. Who would ever suggest that? So for Tannehill, he's not Tom Brady, and he never will be. I really don't think he will be. But when he does have time to throw the football, he can be really darn good. And that's just what Miami has not been able to do for him. When you have Dallas Thomas as your starting left guard for the past 3 years, one way or another, whether he started there or he was forced into that role, there's a problem. And when he gets bulldozed every 5 seconds because he doesn't have the strength, the technique, or whatever it is, Tannehill gets eaten after 2 or 3 seconds. And yeah, that's it. There's no more Tannehill, and the play is over. So you force him to do check downs to Landry. You force him to do dump offs here and there. You don't let him look through the reads and find the open guy because he's not good at anticipation. He's not good at throwing people open, if you will. So you got to give him a little more time. That's just the reality of the quarterback situation. And I don't want to hear about other people in the NFL because you know what? There aren't a lot of good quarterbacks out there anymore either. People are still questioning Matt Stafford. People are starting to question Matt Ryan. People are starting to question. Give me another one, Chad. I know there's more. Joe Flacco. He's nothing special.
Yeah, the crowd's always fickle on quarterbacks, and it's a position where it's a have or have not in the league. But going back to the question that guy had at 9-7, I think 9-7 is very possible for the Dolphins, and the reason that not just from what I'm seeing necessarily in the preseason with them right now, but the AFC East. This is a year. I believe it's going to take a step back against some of the other divisions. The AFC East has been one of the stronger divisions in the AFC for a while, and right now you look at Buffalo. Buffalo, I watched Twitter this week and everybody's freaking out because Mike Pouncey might miss a game or two, and I'm thinking you should look at what's going on in Buffalo. I mean, they're losing players like crazy. Players are getting suspended, players are getting hurt, and
that's the signature of a Rex Ryan team there, Chad.
Well, I'm just saying, I think Buffalo is wishful thinking right now for Buffalo because they haven't just lost some players, they've lost some very critical players on their team. Ragland's done, Darius is done, and you start seeing those players fall out. I have a hard time believing that Buffalo is going to just be dominant with that many losses they've taken this late into the preseason. So you have that. Obviously, the Patriots are missing Tom Brady for 4 games, and that makes them more vulnerable than they've been in a while. There's always that possibility they'll get off to a bad start, or when Brady does come back, they're not going to quite be in sync for a game or two. And if that ends up being an extra 2 or 3 losses for the Patriots, that opens things up. And then finally, I don't understand ever what the Jets are doing, but Hackelberg, their quarterback, I don't think he's played it down.
Hackenberg, no, I don't think he has.
And so they're obviously going to be riding on Fitzpatrick's shoulders again this year, and so they have a very good defense, but I just don't see the Jets as being this, unstoppable force either right now. And so the division's wide open. And so for that being said, I don't feel like any of the other teams right now are in a substantially better position than the Dolphins are. So to me, 9-7 is very realistic from that standpoint alone.
Absolutely. Actually, I think now that I pointed out, we're actually getting more questions in the chat, so let's go ahead and answer that too. Let's see. Jason Stavros, first off, I'm sick of seeing on Facebook how Tannehill sucks. To me, he looked really good against Dallas. You agree? Yeah, and he's sorry if we already talked about it. Well, briefly, we did. I was about to get on a little rant. No, Tannehill doesn't suck. That's the short answer. Long answer. Tannehill is a good quarterback when he's given the proper time on the offensive line. That's, I think, more important than anything. More important than his weapons, more important than his running backs, more important than the defense that is behind him. I think the offensive line, which is the one thing he's lacked his whole career, is more important to his success than anything else. Because he turned Brian Hartline into a 2-year, 1,000-yard wide receiver. Where is Brian Hartline right now? He's out of a job. He couldn't even cut it in Cleveland. He couldn't cut it in Cleveland. And that's with Josh Gordon suspended. So he still couldn't get there. And yet with Ryan Tannehill, he got 1,000 yards for 2 seasons. So at this point, I don't even care about his weapons. Just fix the line. That's all I really want to know at this point. Can we give him an offensive line? If this is the year that we can give him some pass protection, then I am absolutely ready for the offense to look good. And I'm absolutely ready for Ryan Tannehill to look good. He looked good against the Cowboys. Yes, he did. He made some tough throws. Got some tough catches going for him. He could have had better numbers, except for the fact that his guys dropped some passes. Well, actually, you know what? I should take that back, and only because you don't know what would have happened if they had made those catches. You don't know if he was going to drive down the field again. It just so happened that at that point, the touchdowns were just delayed a little. Instead of Jordan Cameron catching the touchdown, it turned out to be Kenny Stills. And instead of Landry or Parker catching the touchdown, it turned out to be Stills again. So, yes, he technically threw 5 touchdown passes, but only in the sense that they would have been complete if it had been caught. That doesn't mean that he would have been able to drive down the field again and get more touchdowns.
Yeah, I think in general, some of your stuff's on there with Tannehill. Tannehill, I think you got to realize what he is and what he isn't. He's not a bad quarterback, and I
He's
think
not a great quarterback.
Yeah, people get obsessed with trying to compare him to quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady, and he's not that. He isn't that level of quarterback, but he's also not the bottom of the league. He's kind of in the middle right now. Um, I thought he looked better against the Dallas game, and that was absolutely related to the fact that he was given a little bit of time, to throw the football. Um, but that being said, yeah, they've had line trouble the last few years, but Tannehill has not been a very good pocket quarterback. He doesn't move that well in the pocket. He tends to
his feet are bad. His feet are very bad.
He doesn't slide very well. I don't know how else to say it, but he tends to stay very static when he's going through his progressions, and it gives him a little bit easier angle a lot of times for those defensive linemen. Like even in that Dallas game, he took a sack. What wasn't like within the first few plays he got sacked, and he was calling I watched him go to the line that the Cowboys were showing blitz, and he was calling out the blitzers to the lineman, and then he stood in there and got sacked. And I was thinking, you see that blitz coming, it's coming. They're sending more guys than the line can probably block, and so it's his job to understand what to be doing with the football, and not just to always expect the line that if the line doesn't hold up, the play breaks down, then it's just not going to work. So I do think Gase has been working with him a lot. I've seen a lot, read a lot that they're really working with his pocket movement. And
I have been watching. I've been watching firsthand all camp. Been watching firsthand.
And again, yeah, with all the drills they're doing to try to improve his pocket awareness, because that'll be a big part of Tannehill's game, and also moving him around. But you saw in the Dallas game, he can take off and run with the football. He can throw on the run pretty well. He's definitely got a solid, NFL arm, and he looked pretty good in the Dallas game. And so if you're expecting him to put this team on his shoulder and throw in for MVP of the year, he's probably not going to do that. But he's a solid quarterback, and I think people are way, way, way too critical of Tannehill right now, relative to what your other options are. He's a decent quarterback right now, and again, if Miami said we want to trade him or we were going to cut him, there'd be 10 teams immediately in the NFL that would be doing everything they could do to get their hands on him. So you just got to look at that, and hopefully he's going to continue to move towards his ceiling. He's at that point now. He should be playing high level football at the quarterback. He's in year 5. I kind of gave him another year or two because he came into the league with not a lot of college experience. He hadn't played for 3 or 4 years in a college program. And so you got to give him you had to be a little more patient in the first 2 years, but those are past now, and
yes,
he's now a veteran quarterback, and you're expecting him to play well. And what I expect out of him this year is I don't think he's going to make a lot of foolish mistakes, but I'm hoping that doesn't also let him do too many checkdowns and stay too still in the pocket and take too many snaps, because at some point we've got to have these games where we can see whether he's the guy or not. It's just, I can't think of how many games. There's very, very few. You can probably count on your fingers where it's the fourth quarter, we're down 3 points, and there's 60 seconds left, and Tannehill gets the football. We just don't ever get in those scenarios very often, and that's what we really don't know about him. Does he have that commodity of when the game is on the line, he's at his best? And so hopefully we'll find that out this year.
Well, and let me just say this, and again, let me preface my comments, because I feel like I suddenly I'm gun shy, because every time I do talk about something like this, I have to preface my comments with, I like Tannehill, I think he can be good, and all that other stuff. Now, let me be clear about this. It is not a bad thing to look around for other options. I'm not saying go sign Michael Vick. That is definitely not the answer. No veteran quarterback out there right now is better than Ryan Tannehill, not even close. But that being said, that does not mean that just because Tannehill is currently the starting quarterback, you don't look around for other options, because like I said this on Ron's show a few days ago, and I made the point that how do you know if you're going to catch lightning in a bottle or not? Tom Brady was what? I don't even remember what round he was, but Ron said apparently he was the 199th pick in his draft. And nobody thought he was going to beat out Drew Bledsoe until he actually beat out Drew Bledsoe. Bledsoe got hurt, Brady came in, and Brady lit the NFL on fire, and Bledsoe never got to be the starter again as far as I know. So after that, that was the end of that. Tom Brady took in. Bledsoe eventually went. I think he went to Dallas after that, and he was the backup for a while. And the rest is history. Russell Wilson, he wasn't supposed to beat out Matt Flynn because Matt Flynn threw 6 touchdowns against the Detroit Lions, and they had just spent $10 million to get him and all that other stuff. Russell Wilson not only beat out Matt Flynn by a long shot, but he won a Super Bowl the year after, I believe. So I'm not saying, and I have to keep saying this because I don't want people getting mad at me, I am not saying replace Tannehill. I am saying look around and see if maybe there's somebody out there who could be better in year one. Just could be, possibly, might be, it's a maybe kind of a thing. You never know. Lightning in a bottle. All these different ways of saying it. Same result in the end. I like Tannehill. I like what he can do. I like what he can do when he's got on the top of his game and he's got time to throw the football. That doesn't mean there isn't somebody out there somewhere deep in the vast shadows of the draft in round 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Brandon Doty, maybe, I don't know. I think there's something there. Doesn't mean that there isn't somebody who we can look at and say, hey, we might have something here. That's not what that means. You can't. It's not. The two are not. The two are not mutually exclusive. You can say you like Tannehill and also admit that maybe there's somebody out there who's better. We just haven't found him yet. Correct?
Yeah, I think the team wants to do that. It's just you just have to understand the quarterback is such a difficult commodity.
Correct.
I mean, they're in demand, and so I've made this comment to people before. If you're not happy with the Dolphins quarterback situation, you should be more upset that they're continuing to pay Matt Moore a lot of money to be the backup, and they're not making that move to try to
develop
get
someone.
A potential starter, because you can't go sign one. I mean, there's no free agent quarterback. I mean, you could say Peyton Manning, that's like once in a decade scenario where somebody like that freed up that you could actually go sign him, which the Dolphins even tried to at the time, but you just don't get good quarterbacks on the free agent market, and
Correct.
so you can't go get Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's not better than Ryan Tannehill. And
Fitzpatrick isn't even a good quarterback. The fact that they're paying him is insane to me.
Well, my point is, if you're just a serviceable NFL quarterback, you're getting paid enormous dollars because it's just such a difficult position to fill, and so there really is no option out there free agent wise. It's realistic to replace Ryan Tannehill. So that means you've got to draft him for the most part,
and that's what you should do.
And I don't think they're against it, but I mean, it's there's not many there. I mean, there's so few prospects that come out that have the capability. Now everybody throws the Tom Brady out there, but that's the lottery ticket.
I know, that's what I'm saying. You got to.
That doesn't happen, and so. They drafted a quarterback. They're trying to develop him. He's had his moments in the preseason. He looks very young to me, and he's got a lot to learn.
He's actually 26. Can you believe that?
Well, I meant in terms of his maturity level in the NFL.
He's
a rookie. And so they're working with him. And it wouldn't shock me at all if he's the number 2 next year. But if you don't do that, if you don't use a later round pick and you go get a guy that's got the high caliber arm or that's highly regarded, that means you don't get Laremy Tunsil and you got to draft somebody like Paxton Lynch in the first round.
Correct.
And that's an enormous move to make because Laremy Tunsil is almost as sure a prospect as you can get, and Paxton Lynch is a crapshoot right now. And so at some point, if the Dolphins have that position, you got to make the move, kind of like they did when they got Marino. At the time, Miami had just come out of the Super Bowl and they had David Woodley, who obviously wasn't crazy good or anything, but he had promise. And Shula at that time, they went ahead and grabbed Marino because he was available. And so for Miami to get that, it'd have to be lucky, or they're going to have to do really, really poor and just be in a position where they can get a high prospect rookie that can get drafted. Because you either anymore, you look at the NFL, and if you don't have a top 10 pick, you're not getting a top prospect at the quarterback position. They come off the boards. This year was insane. Look at the trades that happened just to get these prospects. And it's not like Goff and Wentz or anywhere near what somebody like Andrew Luck was coming out of college. It's just the teams are so desperate to get their franchise quarterback. And so in that market, you got to look at that like, well, Tannehill's shown some pretty good stuff. He still has a pretty high ceiling. So do you just go get a new rookie, or do you hope Gase can develop Tannehill and keep trying to build your team? So,
and then again, that's what I'm saying, Chad. They're not mutually exclusive. I'm not saying spend a first round pick or even a second or third round pick, but like, what was Dak Prescott drafted in the 4th round? He seems to be doing pretty good for Dallas so far.
yeah, he does right now. So I have no issue with that, and I don't know where the Dolphins had him ranked, but again, it's easy to point at somebody who pulled off a mid round pick with a guy that's playing, and you look at all the other teams. Like the Jets was my perfect example. The Dallas right now they have Romo, who looks like he'll probably be able to play for, you know, 2 or 3, 4 more years at least, provided he stays out of the buffets. But, I mean, I'm just saying, like, Dallas isn't in desperate need of a starting quarterback, and they just happen to hit. Whereas the Jets have no direction at all right now in quarterback, and they're not even playing their guy in the preseason. And so it's really kind of a crapshoot when you get into those middle rounds for the quarterbacks. But
Yes, it is.
I am with you, Lewis. That I kind of like. I call it the John Gruden approach. He always had a pile of quarterbacks he was grabbing because I think his philosophy was you keep getting quarterbacks, and getting quarterbacks
until you find the right one.
Special one.
That's what Armando's been saying for years, and everybody keeps hammering him for it.
No, I'm with Armando. If you can get a guy in the mid rounds, I don't have any problem. Like every year, you take a quarterback somewhere between rounds 2 and 5 or something, based on where you rate them, and just seeing how they're going. But again, that's my point I'm making when people are frustrated with Tannehill. I say don't get frustrated. They're keeping Tannehill. They've had no opportunities to get anybody on the team better than Tannehill right now. What you get mad about is they don't go do what you're referring to, and they just keep Matt Moore as their backup. And so I'm with you. I would much rather see them roll the dice and keep putting young guys in there until maybe they find one that's special.
Lightning in a bottle. That's all I've been saying. So that's. I think we filled our quota for Ryan Tannehill talk today. Let's see. I hope Jakeem, again, this is Jason Stavros. I really hope Jakeem Grant has some special packages to get him the ball. Do you think he'll be more than a punt and kick returner? We talked about this a little bit earlier on the show, too. Jakeem Grant is an intriguing weapon. That's what I'll call him. He's an intriguing weapon because can he be a regular wide receiver? I suppose if you make him run in a straight line and outrun everybody, yes, he could be, and then you could throw him a deep ball. But again, this needs pass protection, which they should be able to do this year. So maybe Jakeem Grant can be the deep ball receiver. Then as for anything else, his hands bother me. They make me nervous. Like, as explosive and as energetic and as shifty as Jakeem Grant is, there's always that underlying doubt that he's even going to be able to catch the ball. And if he drops the football, then we might have some serious problems because that's considered a live ball, and if the other team gets it, that's them getting the ball back. And that's just on kicks and punt returns. So incomplete passes at bad times because you want to give him the ball. If I'm going to use Jakeem Grant in the offense, it's not going to be as a wide receiver. It's going to be as somebody you can throw a short route to, like a little dump off here, and then let him just kind of run around everybody because, like the one scout said, it was like trying to tackle smoke. So let him dodge people, let him break tackles, or rather, I shouldn't even say break tackles, just let him make people miss tackles because they're not even going to get his hands on him. The fact that he's so small and he's so fast and he's so shifty with his feet, he's going to be very difficult to tackle him. So if I'm going to use Jakeem Grant, it's actually going to be as a weapon out of the backfield, or at the very most in the slot, instead of Jarvis Landry. Let Landry do something else because Landry is he's a little bigger, he's more balanced, he's got more power in him, so he can afford to do other things. So Jakeem Grant, will he be more? I think Gase has plans for Jakeem Grant other than kick returning and punt returning. So yes, I do think he will be used as more than just a special teams guy. I just don't know what that is yet because only Adam Gase seems to know. And the fact that he kept him out of the Cowboys game tells me that he doesn't want to, let's say, reveal anything just yet. I just have to hope that it works.
Yeah, I go with that question, Lois. I think they are going to use Jakeem Grant because in the NFL, the need to win is always the precedent. And right now, there's going to get games where you need to win those games. And Jakeem Grant is a game changer. He's special with the ball in his hands. I don't think you're going to see him doing a ton of snaps on the offense, but I imagine they're going to get him in there, and if he's being successful, you'll see him more and more. But just getting him the ball in space is what they're going to do. I don't think you're going to see him doing a lot of down the field routes. And if you want to go vertical, throw the ball up to Devontae Parker. That's what I would do if I was the Dolphins, because it's going to be hard to get timing down with Jakeem Grant. Mike Wallace was bad enough with Tannehill. It's so hard for those guys to get the timing on guys that are that fast, and hit those plays vertical. It's much easier to say, I'm just going to throw the ball up in the air and let Devontae Parker go up and get it. And so that to me is the vertical attack in their game. Jakeem Grant, what I'm doing is I would throw him a lot of those wide receiver screens, or if the D-back plays off, you just turn immediately throw to him. Just give him a yard or two of space and let him do his thing. And those are easier passes for him to catch, and it puts a lot of pressure on the defense because he's so quick. There's going to be times where a guy can't get their hands on him, and that's going to force, I think, teams to probably be a little more conservative maybe with their safeties and stuff, because if you leave a cornerback out on an island with Jakeem Grant and your corner doesn't get a hand on him, nobody's going to catch him. And so you're going to have to account for him on defense. So I think Gase will use him to that regard. And you'll see him play more and more throughout the season. So again, I think he'll definitely be more than just a kick return and punt return guy.
I just want to say, Chad, that you are right, and I like everything you just said. However, the comparison to Mike Wallace, I feel like, is just a little unfair. Because for what it's worth, Jakeem Grant will fight for the ball, all 5'7" of them.
Well, I don't disagree with that. The point I'm making, Lewis, is a lot of people say, well, if a guy's really fast, use him vertical because he cannot run anybody.
Yeah, I know.
But that's true. But you got to have your timing down, so when your quarterback, launches it up, that it lands underneath the guy. So Tannehill, that hasn't been his strength, to throw a ball way out there and let his guy just run and catch up to it and catch it. It's just the timing hasn't been there. So
yeah,
I'm not saying they won't ever do that. I just don't expect you'll see a lot of deep bombs to Jakeem Grant. That's the point I'm making. I think it'll be much more getting him the ball in short passes in space, and letting him try to make people miss and take off.
Yeah, I'm just needling you a little bit, brother. I got to mess with you a little bit. You know that.
No, I get you. I'm not saying he's Mike Wallace whatsoever. I'm saying that he's definitely not.
All right, so we'll go ahead and wrap this show up pretty soon. Chad, is there anything in particular you really want to see coming up in the Falcons game, or rather you really don't want to see? I don't know, one of each.
I really don't want to see any severe injuries, because this is the game where you got to turn it up.
Anybody in particular you're looking at?
Well, Tannehill for sure. I don't
yeah.
know what Matt Moore's status is right now. I know
he's concussed and he's not playing.
Well, I know that, and so that
for a while.
We got to be a little more careful with Tannehill, because I don't want to be starting our rookie quarterback on the road in Seattle to start the season.
Yuck.
So, but I'll be looking at the bubble, and I guess I should step back to say on the starters, I'm looking for the guys that have been, in my opinion, taking it easy. Mario Williams, Kiko Alonso. I'm looking for them to turn it up this game and let it loose. And I'm expecting to see an appearance by Cameron Wake in the game, and to see how he's doing. And finally, I'm expecting to see what Arian Foster is really all about. A lot of people are excited about him, but I need to see if he still has it. And so this is going to be the game I think they let him get a little bit of extensive time in there to get ready. So those are the starters on the next level. I'm really curious to see where the competition's going in the defensive backfield. I think they're still completely unsettled at the corner. I know Bobby McCain has the slot job pretty well locked down, and with Michael Thomas, we're okay probably in the slot. Maxwell, he's obviously going to be the starting boundary corner. I'm still a little skeptical on how good he's going to be, but other than that, is it going to be Tony Lippett? Is there going to be another guy step up? Is
Xavier
Howard going to be able to take that role without seeing any action? And so keep a good eye as we get into the second, third unit, because there's defensive backs right now that can still practically earn starting jobs based on their performance. I want to see how Mike Hull performs. He's been performing well. And if Kiko Alonso in particular plays poorly, keep a close eye on him, because I think he's getting closer and closer right now on the depth chart. And watch Isaiah Pete and Damian Williams. That's another really, really tight matchup right now. watching Billy Turner, Bushrod. That's another head-to-head matchup. So that's what I'm going to be watching for in the preseason games are the positions that are still open and the players competing for it to see how they handle the game.
Absolutely. And I guess for me, it would be I want to see. I also want to see what Tannehill's going to do. I want to see what Tunsil's going to do. I want to make sure that what happened against Dallas is not a fluke, and he'll be able to continue his ability to do the pass protection well. That's what I really want to see. I also want to see if he can improve on the run blocking, because as much as people say that Arian Foster is this guy or he's this guy, and guys like Ron think he's going to start because of what they think of Ajayi, what the Dolphins think of Ajayi, or what Tom says is that pretty much he doesn't have the explosiveness anymore and he's not really going to be used as a running back. Like, I need to see some actual run blocking before I start making judgments on running backs, because without holes to run through, that really is no point. Arian Foster has always been I see the hole and I'm going to use the hole, because he has that elite vision like no one else has in this league. Adrian Peterson, I don't even know if Adrian Peterson has as good vision as Arian Foster, to be perfectly honest. What Adrian Peterson has is superior physical talent. I don't know if he has superior vision. Arian Foster is not as good as Adrian Peterson because he doesn't have what Peterson has physically. So with that said, I need to see some holes for him to run through, because if Arian Foster doesn't see holes to run through, he's not going to try and run through them, because that's just common sense. Why am I going to slam my head into a wall and knowing that I'm not going to get anywhere?
Yeah, we'll get to see how Foster looks running the ball, but when the season gets here, I think Gase is going to use him a lot more proficiently in the passing game. So I think you'll see him running some actual wide receiver type routes, which is he's fully capable of doing. And to me, that makes all the sense in the world. If you got a big run stuffing linebacker in there, why try to run at him? Why don't you make him try to cover Arian Foster on routes? So I'm feeling pretty good about Arian Foster in that regard, but he has to show that physically he still has some explosiveness in the running game. That's what it's going to be all about.
Well, tell me. Okay, so just real quick, define what you mean by explosiveness, because Foster has never been an explosive guy to me. What is it that you're looking for?
I would expect him to be able to show some good cut movement and maybe make a guy miss. I would expect him to also be able to lower his shoulder and get some yard after contact type runs. And I guess in a nutshell, I'd be looking for him to be able to create on his own. You know, if he gets a block and he has a one-on-one matchup, can he beat a linebacker one-on-one, whether it's speed or power? And two, if they open up a hole, what kind of burst and acceleration does he have? Is he able to just take off and run into the next level and get upfield? How fast is he? And so that's what I'm looking for. Obviously, to judge that one is we got to have holes opened up by the offensive line for him to see if he can take off. You know, if he gets an open lane. But at the very least, we should be able to see. He should be able to make some moves and pick up some yards on his own, and that's what I'm looking at from him.
All right, then. So I guess that means we'll just go ahead and call it a night, folks. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, everybody in the comment section. I will be keeping an eye on this in the future. Trust me, I won't forget. I will make sure to have this open. And for everybody on Twitter who sent their questions, I want to thank you. I want to thank Antoine for joining us and being the guest commentator for the day. And I want to thank, of course, you, my co-host, Chad Ronnebaum. You're awesome, and I'm glad to have you as my co-host. So thank you all so much for watching. And with any luck, we'll be with you next week for another edition of PhinManiacs Live. Good night, everybody.